Welcome to Credit and Coffee. Today, I'm sharing the deeply personal story of how the rise and devastating fall of my startup taught me profound lessons about wealth, friendship, and what truly matters. It began with a whisper of an idea, a restless itch beneath my skin that pulsed harder than the sterile hum of the servers in the old tech company where I'd spent a decade, watching the clock tick and my ambitions slowly calcify. I remembered the day clearly, the low hum of the fluorescent lights that cast a yellowish glow on the beige cubicle walls, the faint, acrid smell of stale coffee from the break room mingling with the synthetic scent of carpet cleaner, the way my fingers felt heavy on the keyboard as I typed out another report that felt utterly meaningless, a series of numbers and projections designed to satisfy a distant executive I'd never met, and the sudden, overwhelming realization that this wasn't just a job anymore, it was a slow surrender, a quiet death of the dreams I'd nursed since my 20s about building something of my own, something that truly mattered, that resonated with my desire to innovate, to create, to leave a mark, a feeling that had been buried under years of meeting quarterly goals and navigating corporate politics. The endless cycles of performance reviews and team-building exercises that felt more like soul-crushing obligations than genuine connection, but it resurfaced with a burning intensity that made my chest ache, with a mixture of fear and exhilarating hope, a paradox that would define the next few years of my life. That desk, with its chipped veneer and the faint, permanent ring from countless forgotten coffee mugs, had become a symbol of my stagnation, and the thought of another decade chained to it sent a shiver of dread down my spine, a cold premonition of regret that spurred me towards action, towards the precipice of a decision that felt both terrifying and utterly inevitable. My wife, bless her steady heart and pragmatic mind, initially looked at me with a mixture of concern and quiet support when I first broached the idea of leaving the stable, if soul-crushing, job, her hand reaching across the kitchen table to squeeze mine, her touch a grounding presence amidst the swirling chaos of my nascent ambition, her eyes reflecting the worry she felt for our future, for the comfortable, if somewhat predictable, life we had built within the confines of our carefully managed budget. Even if it was tinged with the constant anxiety of a looming mortgage payment and the silent pressure of supporting my aging parents, who were increasingly dependent on our help for medical expenses and day-to-day living, a responsibility that had slowly grown heavier as my father's health declined and my mother's memory started to fray, making me acutely aware of our place in the sandwich generation, caught between our children's future and our parents' present, a constant, low-level hum of financial stress beneath the surface of our otherwise pleasant existence. I could feel the texture of her skin against mine, the subtle roughness of her wedding band, a tangible reminder of our shared commitment and the life we had painstakingly woven together. We had always been careful with our finances, diligently setting aside what we could into various investments, mostly in the stock market, focusing on long-term growth and stable income streams, meticulously tracking every dollar, always with an eye on building a comfortable nest egg that would secure our retirement and provide a buffer against life's inevitable uncertainties. But the idea of a startup, of diving headfirst into the volatile world of new ventures, was a different beast entirely. A leap of faith into an unknown abyss that promised either immense rewards or utter ruin. I tried to explain the vision to her, the elegant simplicity of the platform, the market gap it would fill, the potential for disruption, my voice growing animated, but I could see the lines of worry deepen around her eyes, a silent question about the risk management of such a radical departure from our carefully constructed financial plan. The initial capital came from a combination of meticulously saved personal investments, funds that represented years of foregoing small luxuries and disciplined saving, a small home equity loan we took out with a knot of apprehension in my stomach, the paperwork feeling heavy and significant in my hands, each signature a binding promise to an uncertain future, and the invaluable, if somewhat naive, belief that my vision alone would be enough to conquer the market. A belief that was fueled by endless late nights, fueled by lukewarm coffee, and the intoxicating glow of my laptop screen, designing, coding, planning, dreaming, the smell of burnt toast often filling the air as I forgot the world outside the glowing monitor, the faint scent of charcoal, a constant companion to my burgeoning ambition, a testament to the all-consuming nature of this new obsession. I remember the feel of the cool metal of my laptop, the subtle warmth emanating from the keyboard as I poured myself into the work, the quiet hum of the fan a soundtrack to my tireless efforts, the only sounds for hours on end as the city outside slept, while my mind raced, building, creating, refining each line of code, each strategic decision feeling like a tiny piece of the future, a future I was convinced would be glorious, a future that demanded every ounce of my energy and belief. I was living on adrenaline and the fervent hope that this massive gamble, this grand investment of our time, our money, our very future, would pay off in a way that truly transformed our lives, freeing us from the quiet anxieties of the mortgage and the escalating healthcare costs for my parents, allowing us to not just survive, but to truly thrive, to breathe freely for the first time. The early days were a blur of frenetic energy and shoestring budgets, working out of a rented co-working space that smelled faintly of cheap pizza and desperation, a lingering aroma of burnt popcorn often hanging in the air from the communal microwave, surrounded by other dreamers and schemers, each of us clinging to the fragile hope that our idea was the one that would break through, the one that would change the world, or at least our small corner of it. I remember the exact texture of the worn office chair, its faded fabric clinging to my clothes, the way the cheap laminate desk felt cool under my forearm as I typed, its surface scratched and scarred from countless other ambitious ventures, the distant murmur of other people's phone calls, each a small, unique story unfolding around me, a symphony of hushed negotiations and frantic keyboard clicks that provided a strange kind of solace, a shared sense of striving. We subsisted on instant noodles and lukewarm, bottomless cups of coffee, the grit of the powdered sugar often catching in my throat, each small victory celebrated with cheap sparkling wine, the bubbles barely tickling my tongue. There were moments of profound doubt, staring at lines of code that refused to cooperate, feeling the weight of the financial commitments, the shadow of our home equity loan looming large, wondering if I had made the most colossal mistake of my life, if I was dragging my wife and parents into an abyss of my own making, the cold dread making my hands tremble on the keyboard. But then a breakthrough, a bug squashed, a feature finally working, and the surge of elation would wash away the fear, reaffirming my conviction. We built an innovative platform, leveraging emerging technologies, something that streamlined a previously convoluted process, making it intuitive and accessible, a genuine solution to a pervasive problem, and it caught the eye of early adopters and, more importantly, a few key investors who saw the spark, the potential for explosive growth, the kind of disruption that promised significant returns. I remember the exact moment of the first major funding round closing, the pen scratching across the signature line, the quiet click of the laptop as the wire transfer notification appeared on screen, a rush of adrenaline mixed with a dizzying sense of validation, the smell of printer ink from the newly signed contracts, the subtle shift in the air, from hopeful ambition to tangible success. The first infusion of capital felt like a lightning strike, a sudden surge of validation and power, transforming our tiny operation into a burgeoning enterprise. We moved into a sleek new office downtown, with panoramic views of the city skyline, its glass walls reflecting the vastness of our ambition, a space that felt impossibly vast and sophisticated, a far cry from the cramped corners of my previous corporate life and the makeshift chaos of the co-working space. The hum of new equipment, the scent of freshly brewed artisanal coffee filling the air, a sophisticated aroma that replaced the cheap pizza, the constant buzz of activity, it was intoxicating, a symphony of success, a vibrant tapestry woven from the threads of hard work and good fortune. My wife even started to relax, the worry lines around her eyes softening as she watched our bank account swell, as the initial investment started to yield impressive returns, giving us a taste of what passive income could truly mean, a sense of security that was both exhilarating and, for a long time, unfamiliar. We bought a beautiful new house, a sprawling, modern design with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that stretched for miles across the city, a place that felt like a permanent monument to our achievement, a tangible symbol of the empire I was building. The polished concrete floors felt cool underfoot, the minimalist design a stark contrast to our previous, more traditional home, every corner speaking of curated success. But even then, amidst the gleaming surfaces and the champagne toasts, a quiet anxiety began to coil in my stomach. The mortgage on that dream house was substantial, a staggering sum that dwarfed our previous one, and the initial interest rates, while manageable in the current economic climate, felt like a silent timer, especially as whispers of economic shifts and potential rate hikes began to circulate in financial news, a faint, disquieting hum beneath the surface of our new affluence. We were technically wealthy, at least on paper, but also in a way, house poor, tied to this opulent symbol of success, needing the startup's continuous growth to sustain it all, the ever-present shadow of the large credit lines we now held, a subtle pressure to maintain the illusion, to ensure the cash flow never stopped. The feeling was akin to walking on a tightrope, high above the ground, the view magnificent, but the precariousness undeniable. Each luxury, each expansion, felt like another step onto that rope, thrilling but increasingly risky. The success grew, and with it, my circle of acquaintances expanded, attracting people like moths to a flame, their eyes glinting with a mixture of admiration and opportunistic curiosity. Old friends from college reappeared, their messages suddenly filled with effusive congratulations and vague proposals for synergy. Newfound advisors and partners emerged from the woodwork, all eager to bask in the glow, to offer their support, their connections there. Ideas, most of which were thinly veiled attempts to attach themselves to our rising star. My wife often observed them with a quiet skepticism, a discerning look in her eyes that I, in my hubris, often dismissed, mistaking her caution for a lack of vision, her groundedness for an inability to grasp the exhilarating scale of our potential. I was too busy living the dream, flying business class to international conferences, the soft leather of the seats feeling luxurious beneath me, closing deals that made headlines, seeing my name in industry publications, my ego swelling with each positive mention, each laudatory article. The thrill of being recognized, of having my vision validated on such a grand scale, was intoxicating, a powerful elixir that obscured any nascent doubts. I started to dabble more heavily in cryptocurrencies, particularly Bitcoin and some of the more speculative altcoins, seeing them as the next frontier, the fast track to even greater wealth, convinced that my innate understanding of technology gave me an edge, a superior insight into market movements that others lacked, a secret superpower for deciphering the volatile dance of digital assets. I dismissed the inherent risks, the volatile swings that financial analysts constantly warned against, believing myself immune, above the fray, a master of this new digital domain. The thrill of watching my digital wallet expand with a few clicks, the sudden spikes in value that represented hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, in theoretical gains, was an addiction far more potent than any substance, a rush that made traditional investments in the stock market seem pedestrian and slow. It became a side game, a personal venture separate from the core business, a secret thrill that I kept mostly to myself, not wanting to worry my wife with the more speculative aspects of my growing portfolio, a clandestine high-stakes poker game played in the quiet hours of the night. We still lived well, maintaining the opulent facade, but the spending habits gradually escalated, almost imperceptibly at first, then with an accelerating momentum that felt impossible to curb. Expensive dinners with investors at Michelin-starred restaurants, the clinking of crystal glasses, the hushed conversations over plates of artfully arranged food, designer clothes that felt stiff and new, yet perfectly suited to my elevated status luxury vacations to remote islands where the sand was impossibly white and the water impossibly blue, private school for our children. The cost of living seemed to balloon around us, yet the income always seemed to keep pace, or so I convinced myself. Caught in a cycle of earning and spending that felt both exhilarating and strangely hollow. I started supporting my parents even more generously, paying for their medical debts entirely, ensuring they had the best care, moving them into a comfortable assisted living facility that offered round-the-clock nursing and stimulating activities, the costs of which were astronomical but felt like a small price to pay for their peace of mind, a responsibility I was proud to bear, a tangible demonstration of my success and gratitude. Even as the quiet voice of caution whispered about the ever-increasing outflow of cash, the constant hum of the air conditioning in the new house, the soft glow of designer lamps, the subtle scent of expensive candles, these were the new backdrop of my life, a cocoon of luxury that began to feel increasingly fragile. The first real crack appeared subtly, a faint tremor that I initially ignored, choosing instead to focus on the dazzling superstructure I had erected. A key competitor, a scrappy, well-funded upstart, launched a similar product, slightly cheaper, slightly more aggressive in its marketing, its advertising campaigns suddenly appearing everywhere, like an annoying buzzing fly. The market began to show signs of contraction, a general tightening across the tech sector, a shift in the prevailing winds that felt unsettling. Our growth, once explosive, once a vertical climb to the heavens, started to plateau, the charts flattening, the upward trajectory losing its dizzying momentum. The quarterly reports, once a source of exhilarating pride, filled with double-digit growth and optimistic projections, began to read more like cautionary tales, the numbers holding a new, unsettling ambiguity. The whispers about rising interest rates turned into concrete announcements from the central bank, making our substantial mortgage, with its once manageable monthly payments, feel like a lead weight dragging us down, a suffocating burden that grew heavier with each passing week. I would stare at the mortgage statements, the numbers blurring, doing mental calculations of how much an extra 0.5% would impact our already stretched budget. The cost of living seemed to surge overnight. Utility bills, once a minor line item, now ballooned into shocking sums, the crisp paper of the statements feeling like accusations in my hand. Groceries, the simple act of filling a cart, became an exercise in careful budgeting, the supermarket menu showing prices I could scarcely believe, each item a small, silent indictment of rampant inflation that was eroding the value of every dollar, chipping away at our perceived financial stability. My wife, sensing the shift, started to question our spending, gently at first, her voice soft as she laid out the latest bills on the polished kitchen counter, her finger tracing the escalating totals, then with increasing urgency, her quiet observations punctuated by the rustle of ever-growing bills and the sight of supermarket menus showing prices I could scarcely believe, her eyes filled with a new kind of worry, a familiar anxiety from our earlier, leaner days that I thought we had outrun. She would point to the overflowing laundry basket of our children's expensive sports gear or the mounting tuition statements, asking if we truly needed everything, if there were areas we could scale back, her pragmatism a stark contrast to my fading optimism. I brushed off her concerns, insisting it was a temporary blip, a market correction, a chance for us to consolidate, to innovate further, my voice perhaps a little too loud, a little too dismissive, revealing the cracks in my own composure. But deep down, the quiet anxiety that had always been a faint undercurrent now began to pulse with a more insistent rhythm, a frantic drumbeat against the walls of my carefully constructed empire, a growing sense of dread that kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling of the dream house, which now felt less like a monument and more like a massive, fragile shell, the sounds of the city outside muted but present, a constant, low thrum against my increasingly frayed nerves. The intricate financial models I had once so confidently built now felt like house of cards, teetering on the edge of a precipice, and the responsibility for every single brick, every single card, rested squarely on my shoulders. The sense of isolation grew, a heavy blanket that smothered the joy of my supposed success. The cryptocurrencies, my secret wellspring of easy money, my personal, high-stakes casino, began their own descent. What started as minor corrections, small dips that I rationalized as healthy market adjustments, turned into steep dives, then full-blown crashes, each red candle on the digital charts feeling like a punch to the gut. I watched, paralyzed, unable to look away from the screen, yet unable to act decisively, as my digital fortune evaporated, convinced each dip was the buy-the-dip moment, the absolute bottom, the perfect opportunity to double down and recoup my losses. I threw good money after bad, leveraging assets, taking out new lines of credit against our existing properties, making increasingly desperate and foolish decisions, chasing a phantom recovery that never materialized. The screen glowed with terrifying red numbers, each one a phantom limb tearing away from my body, a piece of my future disappearing into the digital ether. This was debt, real debt, growing at an alarming rate, hidden from my wife, a silent cancer growing inside our perceived financial stability, metastasizing with each reckless trade. The pressure mounted, creating moral compromises within the startup itself. I found myself making decisions for the company that I wouldn't have considered before, cutting corners in product development, stretching ethical boundaries in marketing claims, delaying payments to suppliers who were themselves struggling, all in a frantic attempt to keep the engine running, to maintain the illusion of success for investors, to cover the mounting personal losses that were now intertwined with the company's fate. I rationalized it as temporary, as necessary to survive, but the taste of it was bitter, leaving a metallic tang of self-reproach in my mouth. My friends, the ones who had flocked to my success, their laughter once echoing in my lavish home, began to show their true colors. There was the friend from college who subtly suggested an investment scheme that felt fundamentally wrong, a clear pyramid structure, but I was desperate enough to consider it, my moral compass spinning wildly. Then there was the professional jealousy, thinly veiled barbs about my lavish lifestyle disguised as concerned observations, the quiet satisfaction in their eyes when they saw the first signs of trouble, the way they distanced themselves, subtly at first, their calls growing shorter, their invitations to meet less frequent, then openly, their absence a deafening silence. I realized with a sickening lurch that their camaraderie was entirely conditional, predicated on my continued ascent, a transactional relationship I had been too naive to recognize. The support I thought I had from some of my investors also wavered, their calls becoming less frequent, their enthusiasm replaced by a cold, calculating assessment of risk, their voices suddenly devoid of the warmth they once exuded, replaced by the detached language of quarterly earnings and balance sheets. They saw the writing on the wall, the same red numbers I saw, but they were not tied to the emotional weight of it all, only the financial. The walls of the new office, once so grand, began to feel oppressive, the panoramic views now mocking the increasingly narrow confines of my options. The true collapse was swift and brutal, a cascade of dominoes falling with agonizing precision, each one echoing the sound of shattering dreams. A major investor, one who had been a cornerstone of our early funding, pulled out, citing market instability and our recent lack of significant growth, their brief email terse and devoid of any personal sentiment, a final, impersonal blow. This triggered a panic among the remaining stakeholders. Our runway, once seemingly endless, became frighteningly short, a flickering candle in a hurricane. I had to let people go, team members who had believed in my vision, who had poured their own lives into the startup, whose faces were a blur of shock and quiet despair as I delivered the news, the words catching in my throat, a hollow echo of the emotional toll of a layoff from a long-term tech job. Only this time I was the one delivering it, and the pain was amplified by the knowledge that I had failed them, that their livelihoods were now disrupted because of my miscalculations, my hidden debts. My desperate gambles, the severance packages, the outstanding debts, the inability to meet payroll, it was a daily torment, a constant knot of anxiety in my stomach that made eating impossible and sleep a fleeting luxury. The company's financial situation became a gaping wound, hemorrhaging money with terrifying speed, each outgoing payment a fresh stab. The market continued its downward spiral, taking any remaining value in my cryptocurrency holdings with it, a final, cruel twist of the knife. My personal finances, already strained by the hidden debt and the weight of the massive mortgage, buckled under the immense pressure, threatening to collapse entirely. I couldn't hide it from my wife any longer, the weight of the secret growing too heavy to bear, crushing me from the inside out. The night I finally laid it all out, the full extent of the startup's decline, my reckless investments, the mounting personal debt, the precariousness of our entire situation, was the night our life together fractured. We sat in the cavernous living room of our dream house, the city lights twinkling indifferently outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long, unsettling shadows across her face. Her face, usually so warm and understanding, hardened into a mask of shock, then betrayal, her eyes wide with a pain that mirrored my own, but laced with a searing sense of disbelief. The silence in the room was louder than any argument, punctuated only by the distant hum of the refrigerator and the frantic beating of my own heart, a raw, exposed nerve. The dream house, our once gleaming symbol of success, became a cage, its soaring ceilings and panoramic views now mocking the depths of our despair, each luxurious detail a painful reminder of how far we had fallen. We were forced to sell it, the process a slow, agonizing public admission of failure, the stark contrast between the initial euphoria of purchase and the soul-crushing reality of sale. Each box packed a tear in the fabric of our shared future, each viewing a fresh wound inflicted by strangers picking apart our once cherished home. The heavy for sale sign hammered into the immaculate lawn felt like a tombstone marking the end of an era. The mortgage, even with the sale, left us with lingering debt, a phantom limb of our former affluence, a constant ache beneath the surface of our new, diminished reality. The marital strain became unbearable, a suffocating weight that pressed down on our once solid foundation. The betrayal of my secret debt, the sheer scale of the financial recklessness that had jeopardized everything we had built, the constant, gnawing financial comparison to friends who had stayed in secure corporate jobs and now seemed to be thriving, their lives moving forward while ours crumbled. It was too much for us to bear, individually or together. We tried for a time to navigate the wreckage, sifting through the debris of our broken dreams, but the trust was broken, replaced by a quiet resentment that festered between us like a slow poison, contaminating every interaction, every shared moment. Our conversations became sterile, clipped exchanges about budgets and creditors, devoid of any warmth or genuine connection, each word a step further apart. One afternoon after another such sterile conversation, the air thick with unspoken accusations and profound weariness, she packed a single bag, her movements precise and deliberate, her face devoid of emotion, a blank slate where I once read every joy and sorrow. The soft rustle of her clothes going into the bag, the quiet click of the zipper, were the only sounds. She left not with anger, not with a dramatic exit, but with a weary finality that cut deeper than any outburst, her departure marking the official end of our shared dream, the quiet click of the front door echoing the sound of my heart breaking into 1,000 irreparable pieces, leaving behind a cold, empty void that pulsed with loss. The silence that followed her departure was absolute, a heavy, suffocating blanket that pressed down on me, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. The divorce was amicable but devastating, a testament to the fact that even profound love can buckle under the crushing weight of financial crisis. The legal papers a cold, impersonal record of a life that had been meticulously dismantled. I was truly alone, stripped bare of everything I had built, everything I had believed in. The empire had fallen, and I, along with it, left amidst the ruins, a solitary figure in the dust. Bankruptcy became the inevitable next step, a humiliating and necessary process that felt like a public flogging. Each document filed a fresh wound, each legal fee a cruel reminder of my utter failure. My parents' medical expenses, once easily covered with a flick of my wrist, now became another source of immense stress, a stark reminder of the responsibilities I still carried, even as I struggled to put food on my own table, the shame burning hot in my chest. My student loan debt, which I had forgotten about in my years of supposed wealth, having paid it off only to have it resurface through complex financial restructuring during the bankruptcy, now returned with a vengeance, its monthly payments a constant, nagging reminder of a past I thought I had escaped, a ghost from my leaner days that refused to stay buried. The taste of instant ramen, once a nostalgic memory of my early startup days, now felt like a bitter, unwelcome reality. For a long time, there was only a hollow ache, a profound emptiness that echoed in every corner of my existence. The once vibrant world, with its dazzling colors and intoxicating possibilities, now seemed muted, colorless, shrouded in a perpetual gray. I moved into a small, sparsely furnished apartment, the walls thin enough to hear the faint murmur of my neighbors' lives, the rhythmic clinking of dishes, the rise and fall of their conversations, the distant drone of their televisions, a stark contrast to the sprawling luxury and quiet privacy I had grown accustomed to. The chill of the morning air seemed to seep deeper into my bones, reminding me of the emptiness inside, a constant, physical manifestation of my internal desolation. I remember staring at an empty coffee cup on my tiny kitchen table, its chipped rim and faded pattern a symbol of my reduced circumstances, the silence in the room deafening, the faint smell of instant coffee lingering in the air, a pathetic echo of the artisanal brews that once fueled my ambition and had been served in gleaming ceramic mugs in my old office. There were days I could barely get out of bed, the weight of failure pressing down on me, suffocating me with its relentless grip, the coarse texture of the sheets against my skin a reminder of the raw reality of my situation. I would lie there, eyes fixed on the peeling paint on the ceiling, replaying every mistake, every misstep, every rash decision, a relentless mental torment. The memory of my wife's face as she left, her quiet finality, was a constant, dull throb in my chest. The children's laughter, once a joyous sound in our grand house, now felt like a distant, unreachable echo. But slowly, imperceptibly at first, a tiny spark began to glow in the darkness, a faint ember that promised the possibility of warmth. It started with simple things, a conscious effort to reconnect with the tangible, the immediate. The rhythmic rhythm of walking to a new, modest job, a technical support role at a small, stable company, a job far removed from the high-flying world of startups and the heady rush of big deals, a midlife career change that felt like a step backwards, a demotion in the grand game of life, but offered a surprising sense of quiet stability, a predictable routine, a small but steady income. The walk itself became a ritual, the feeling of the pavement beneath my worn shoes, the fresh, crisp air against my face, the sound of birdsong in the small park I walked through each morning, a detail I had never noticed before in my haste to conquer the world, now a delicate, melodic balm to my soul, a reminder of the persistent beauty of the everyday. The taste of a carefully brewed cup of coffee, made with ground beans at home, savored slowly, not rushed, the rich, earthy aroma filling my small kitchen, a profound pleasure in its simplicity, a stark contrast to the lukewarm instant brews that had become my staple. I began to appreciate the texture of an old, worn sweater, the familiar comfort of the wool against my skin, the softness that only time and countless washes could impart, the deep, enveloping comfort of a warm blanket on a cold night, its weight a reassuring presence, the simple, meditative act of preparing a meal for myself, peeling vegetables, chopping herbs, stirring a pot on the stove, something I hadn't truly done in years, having relied on catered meals and expensive restaurants. The scent of garlic sizzling in oil, the gentle bubbling of soup on the hob, these became small anchors in my day. I found a quiet strength in rebuilding, brick by brick, not an empire, but a life, a far more resilient structure built on solid ground. The professional jealousy that had poisoned friendships now felt distant, irrelevant, a hollow echo from a past life that held no power over me. The constant financial comparison that once tormented me, the endless mental calculus of who had more, who was succeeding faster, had lost its sting, its power to diminish my worth. I was no longer trying to impress anyone, no longer chasing an illusory vision of success built on external validation and fleeting wealth. My focus shifted inward, towards what truly mattered, towards the cultivation of an internal landscape that was rich and fulfilling, regardless of external circumstances. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping with after-school programs, finding unexpected joy in helping others, in simple human connection, in the bright, unvarnished smiles of children, their gratitude a pure, uncomplicated gift. I reconnected with a few genuine friends, those who had remained steadfast even after the empire fell, who offered not pity but quiet understanding and unwavering support, their presence a balm to my scarred soul, their loyalty a precious commodity I now truly valued. We would meet for coffee at a small, unpretentious cafe, the scent of roasting beans mingling with the quiet chatter, talking about life, not just business, about hopes and fears, about the small moments of joy and struggle that make up a human existence. And I found a depth in those conversations that I had never truly experienced before, a sense of belonging that was more profound than any superficial networking event. I learned to budget meticulously, to live within my means, to find contentment in scarcity rather than abundance, each carefully tracked dollar a small victory, a testament to my newfound discipline. The quiet anxiety over soaring inflation and high utility bills was still there, a ghost of my past, a low hum of caution, but it no longer consumed me, no longer paralyzed me with fear. I learned to navigate it, to adapt, to find efficiencies, to appreciate the ingenuity that necessity breeds, the satisfaction of making things work with less. My parents, though still needing support, saw a newfound peace in my eyes, a calm resilience that hadn't been there when I was chasing fortunes, when my visits were rushed and distracted. I visited them more often, not burdened by the need to project an image of success, but simply to be present, to hold my mother's hand, feeling the delicate papery texture of her skin, to listen patiently to my father's fading stories, finding comfort in the shared silence, in the simple act of being together. The ending wasn't triumphant, not in the way I once defined triumph. There was no grand comeback, no regaining of lost fortunes, no new empire rising from the ashes of the old. It was something far more profound. It was a gentle, bittersweet contentment, a deep understanding that the true cost of success wasn't the money, the power, or the prestige, but the quiet moments, the genuine connections, the inner peace that had been sacrificed on the altar of ambition, offered up as a desperate plea to the gods of wealth. I survived. I learned. And in that learning, in that stripping away of everything external, I found myself whole and content, not with what I had, but with who I had become, a man deeply aware of his own resilience, of the simple, undeniable truth of his own existence. The walls of my small apartment, no longer a reminder of lost grandeur, now simply felt like home, a safe, quiet haven for a man who had finally learned to be truly present in his own life, to appreciate the warmth of the sun through the window, the soft murmur of the street outside, the gentle rhythm of his own breathing. The empty cups on the table were just empty cups, waiting to be refilled, not with ambition, but with a quiet, everyday joy, a profound sense of gratitude for the simple gift of being. If you've ever felt the pressure of building an empire, or faced the crushing weight of a financial setback, you know how isolating it can be. What was the biggest financial mistake you've ever learned from, and what unexpected lesson did it teach you about what truly matters? Share your stories in the comments below, like this video if it resonated with your own journey, and subscribe for more conversations about life's real lessons, the kind that money can't buy. And just out of curiosity, what's one small joy, perhaps something you once overlooked, that brightened your week?